Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Time to kick off today's video with a tale of workplace karma featuring a chronic complainer, a stolen parking spot, and a sudden case of self-inflicted loneliness. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Coworker stole my parking spot after crying to me how no one is nice to her. Pretty simple, cut and dry. We used to go on walks together every day for our breaks from work. She's a rather negative person, so I would try and help her think about things more positively. Some examples of our conversations: her, I hate this job, it's not what I was expecting. Me, honestly, management's very nice and it could be so much worse, but we live in a big city. It'd be easy to find a better fit if need be. Her, I'm so bored, I have nothing to do. Me, when I first started and ran out of things to do, I'd ask the bosses for work and they're pretty helpful. One day we were walking and she was nonstop complaining about not having room to get out of her car and can't find good parking. We talked about the cars we drive and she told me she drives a RAV4 and my idiot self told her where I parked my car. Sure as crap, the next day her RAV4 is backed into the space I always park in. On top of this, one of our last conversations we had, she told me that blacks are racist. The love of my life is a black man and our son is mixed. She begged me to go on these walks and eat lunch with her because she doesn't like to be alone. Now, I don't say hi to her in the morning. I go by myself on my walk since I'm comfortable being alone and went on said walks alone in the first place. Added bonus, I get along with the IT crew she constantly talks crap about, so I sit with them at lunch sometimes if we're in there together. Now she's alone and trying to make new friends, but it's proving difficult for her since her internalized racism and most of our office is diverse. I actually felt bad for her because she told me her ex-husband was abusive and her church members shamed her for leaving him. She's her own worst enemy, though. So I'm petty because she took my parking spot and showed her racism, so I completely ignore her unless it's necessary to speak with her. Good on you to ignore her and let her realize how stupid she was. Although I'm not sure she's bright enough to comprehend, but she will suffer, though. Do carry on ignoring her. She doesn't deserve better. And our second story. The Forest That Remembers. This is the story of my close relative, told with his permission as I remember it, with names changed and the location slightly altered. I hope I'm not as bad a writer as I feel. Let's begin. Evan Rivers inherited an old house and 150 acres of forest in the state of Maine. When he arrived to sign the papers, he immediately noticed a brand new cottage community springing up just beyond the fence, its sign reading Pine Ridge. The next morning, a gray pickup truck pulled up to his porch. Douglas Brown, president of the local HOA, stepped out and handed him an envelope. "Your forest is neglected," Brown said curtly. "You have 1 month to clear the downed wood and level the trails." "This is private property," Evan replied. "I'm not part of your HOA." Brown pressed his lips into a thin line, left the letter, and drove off. Inside the envelope was a warning and a brochure of approved contractors with their phone numbers. Evan tore it up and tossed the pieces into his fireplace. That same day, a second letter arrived, a $3,500 fine for commercial activity on common land. A map enclosed boldly marked a chunk of his forest as shared use zone. Evan realized the pressure was only beginning. Instead of arguing, he formed Wild Heart Forest LLC, applied for a tourism business license, and commissioned a website offering camping, eco-trails, and educational tours for students. Within a week, he had the county permits. He walked the boundary markers one last time, confirmed his survey records were in order, and said aloud, "Try to seize the forest and I'll see you in court." The forest answered only with the whisper of pine needles. But Evan was resolved. He would not back down. Building the business. For the first 2 weeks, Evan worked without a day off. Each morning before dawn, he fired up his old tractor to haul freshly cut logs to the stream where he began constructing a footbridge. In the afternoons, Adam Miller, a neighboring college student he hired by the hour, arrived. Together, they installed solar panels, hung rainwater tanks, and improved the access road. Meanwhile, Evan completed the paperwork, a recreation license, camp insurance, and the accounting for Wild Heart Forest LLC. 7 days after registering his business, he launched the website and bought targeted ads in Facebook groups for ecotourism enthusiasts. The first booking didn't take long. 6 graduate ecology students from the University of Oregon sought a fieldwork site. When their dust-covered van turned off the highway onto his dirt road, Evan felt a burst of pride until he noticed a freshly felled birch tree blocking the trail, its trunk bearing a sign that read, "No trespassing, HOA." He and Adam dragged the log aside and explained to the students that the neighbors might be mixing up their maps. The students quickly pitched tents, connected their laptops to charging stations, and got to work, cataloging lichens, setting camera traps, and taking soil samples. Evenings were spent around the campfire, brewing cocoa and asking Evan whether a beaver could really fell a pine 2 palms thick. It was idyllic, until one night the power went out. Adam checked the inverter and found the solar panel cable had been cleanly cut, as if someone used bolt cutters. Dents marred the panel frame and fresh tire tracks led away toward the cottages. Evan launched his drone above the pines just in time to catch headlights pulling back to Pine Ridge with a license plate PRH 308, HOA's company truck. He uploaded the footage to the cloud and sent it to the county sheriff. Instead of anger, he felt a chilling calm. He now had proof of intent to damage property. Escalation and arson. That morning's mail brought another letter from the HOA, a new $3,500 invoice for unauthorized commercial operations with a map crossing out yet another section of forest in red labeled buffer zone. The students read it aloud, shaking their heads as if it were a bad joke. Evan photographed the documents, said only, "Another brick in the case." That evening, as storm clouds gathered overhead, the students were preparing dinner when a blaze erupted against the wood shed. Flames caught the dry bark and sparks flew like embers into the treetops. Someone had poured gasoline on the wall. A sharp chemical smell hung in the air. Evan and Adam ripped the tarp off the unfinished platform, smothered the fire, and emptied 2 barrels of rainwater onto the flames just as a thunderstorm broke. The downpour drowned the blaze before the volunteer fire crew arrived. At dawn, Sheriff Sanders surveyed the burned ground. In the scorched grass, they found a disposable grill with a sticker from River Lane Hardware, the same store that sold HOA their bulk equipment. Evan handed over the drone footage and detailed the severed cables. Sanders set his jaw and vowed to seek a search warrant for the HOA office. That afternoon, attorney Marissa Delgado filed a lawsuit for vandalism and obtained a temporary restraining order preventing any HOA members from approaching the property line. The judge granted a preliminary hearing, and police impounded the PRH 308 pickup for inspection. Internally, Douglas Brown remained silent. On social media, Pine Ridge residents split into camps, some siding with Evan, others accusing him of provoking trouble. Turning the tide. Nightfall brought heavy rain, but the camp's light stayed on thanks to motion sensor lamps donated by the university. Evan sat on the footbridge watching the glow dance on the stream's surface. For the first time, he allowed himself a moment of relief. Attack repelled, evidence gathered. Next step, court. The forest smelled of damp moss and smoke, but a firm, calming thought broke through. He now fought for every acre. Days later, 2 sheriff's vehicles rolled into the HOA office. Detective Danton presented the search warrant in the marble hallway scented with cheap coffee. Brown cracked a joke as he reached for his phone. An officer gently redirected his hand. In the supply closet, officers uncovered boxes of documents and an unrecorded cash stash, $52,000 in envelopes, each labeled with a different contractor's name. On top lay a packet dated just the previous day, Rick Road Services. By evening, Bangor news outlets had photographs of the seized safe. On live TV, reporters broadcast from the confiscated site as Pine Ridge residents erupted online, half demanding explanations, half crying conspiracy. Evan watched it all from his cabin, nursing a half-drunk mug of coffee. Marissa sat beside him, drafting a motion to freeze HOA accounts. She looked composed, even pleased. The chain of events from cut cables to Brown's wallet now extended into the courtroom. Late that night, Adam called, breath crackling over the cell signal. He showed Evan the vandalized observation deck at HOA Point, all bolts removed, boards strewn in the grass, an empty canister lying nearby. Evan didn't curse. He simply told Adam to leave everything as is and wait for deputies. 15 minutes later, Evan arrived under the light of a waning moon and flashing patrol lights. Detective Danton pulled a glove fragment from a splintered beam. Another link. The next morning, the county court convened the TRO hearing. Brown looked fatigued. Dark circles framed his eyes and his suit hung awkwardly. When Marissa detailed the unrecorded funds and presented a grocery receipt, the judge cut off the HOA's lawyer. "That's enough. I hereby freeze all HOA accounts and bar any defendant from accessing the forest until this investigation concludes." That night, Evan returned so quietly even the neighbor's dog didn't bark. The forest greeted him with the faint scent of fresh timber as students quietly rebuilt the deck without waiting for orders. Bathed in light, they worked with steady resolve. Sarah handed Evan a tin cup of tea. "Do you really think it's over?" she asked. "No," he answered, sipping the warm brew. "But we have the law and the cameras on our side." An owl hooted in the distance, and the forest night reclaimed its rightful ruler. The trial and community rebirth. 6 weeks later, the grand jury assembled. Prosecutors had DNA analysis from the canister matching Rick Gates, drone footage verified by experts, and bank records showing kickbacks to Douglas Brown. The gallery was packed with journalists. Pine Ridge residents argued in the hall, some calling for HOA dissolution, others blaming politicians. Marissa laid out the case: arson, vandalism, racketeering. The clincher came in the financial spreadsheets. Each Rick Road services check coincided with cash in the unrecorded fund. The defense tried to shift blame to Evan's dangerous tour business, but the prosecutor produced county licenses and safety certificates. Judge Collins refused to let the HOA lawyer finish his argument. "Facts unsupported by evidence have no place here." After 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. Brown and Gates guilty of arson, conspiracy, and fraud. Brown received 5 years and a $50,000 fine. Gates got 4 years and $35,000. The court ordered Pine Ridge HOA dissolved and its roads and easements transferred to county ownership. Evans Forest was designated a protected natural sanctuary with ecotourism rights. Returning home, Evans saw students nailing a new sign at the entrance: "Wild Heart Forest Sanctuary, welcome." The cottage community had rallied around him. Former HOA resident Megan Carter announced a voluntary association to maintain trails and study the forest's ecology. Evan tossed a log on the fire and at last felt at ease. The legacy preserved, the business thriving, and the community united. The forest rustled in evening breeze as if affirming the verdict: justice had taken root deeper than any paved path. 1 year later, on a May morning with dawn just brushing the treetops, Evan awoke to the hum of a tourist drone. The camp was alive. Students packed soil samples, scrambled eggs sizzled on the cook station for a group from Michigan, and a small turbine churned at the stream, installed by engineer volunteers just yesterday. Much had changed. The county repaved the former HOA roads and created a bike trail ending at Wild Heart Forest entrance. Pine Ridge residents voted to dissolve the old rules and form the Friends of the Forest Club. Membership fees no longer funded landscape codes but shared projects: storm cleanup, maple syrup festivals, scholarships for field research. In February, Evans secured a state university grant for moisture sensors to warn of fire risk. The so-called boardwalk they once destroyed was officially named Miller Deck after Adam, now the camp's full-time manager. Former skeptics recognized the value. Properties bordering the forest rose in value, and the ex-HOA office became a library teaching ecology and property rights. Douglas Brown served time in Wyndham Correctional. Newspapers chuckled over his ethical management seminar for inmates. Gates, released early, now drives a truck in a neighboring state, and rumor has it stays far from Maine. That morning, a school bus pulled up. Children hopped off with backpacks and binoculars. The first official field trip for elementary students. Evan greeted them on the bridge where fire smolder marks still lingered. He showed them moose tracks on the muddy bank and told the story, only hinting at the old misunderstandings. As the sun rose and a jay called in the canopy, long tables unfolded on the meadow. Megan Carter poured apple cider, a valley farmer offered honey, and a neighbor strummed a guitar. The air smelled of cinnamon buns and fresh pine. Evan stepped back, gazing down the path to the river. The boards of the bridge gleamed with new oil. The water underneath glowed with serene green depth. A wild turkey called from the underbrush. His shoulders relaxed, the forest breathed fire. People had learned to listen, and beneath the planks, truth throbbed strong. Everything was back in its place, and now as children and adults laughed under the pine needles, Evan realized the fight hadn't just ended in victory, but in the birth of a community that protects what never belonged to one person alone, a living forest that remembers every footstep, every choice, and every new breath. Sometimes all you have to do is just do what you love and let Karen go on her way straight to jail. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.